Welcome everyone to HogvilleNET YouTube Live. It's my in-game. Man, I really thought coming down to the fourth quarter of this tonight, especially the way the game started, that we'd be able to be a little bit relaxed and talking about what was going right in a runaway win for Arkansas against a Pacific team that, quite honestly, I don't think has been very good. But Arkansas doesn't look very good. Granted, Arkansas shorthanded again. Jonas Adu not only not limited tonight, not playing at all. Trevor in Brazil, Arkansas's other, key frontline, one of Arkansas's other key frontline players out tonight after rolling his ankle in the previous game against Troy last week. That happened in the first half. I think he played 9 minutes total and didn't return to that game, not playing tonight. Arkansas down to a top 7 rotation or a 7 only rotation. A 27-11 lead. Arkansas had 5 steals in the first 3 minutes and 15 seconds. Built up that 27-11 lead, and then after that, the defense has become really porous on both the perimeter and protecting drives of the basket. It's been a myriad of issues on both sides of the ball for Arkansas throughout the night. The efficiency shooting for Arkansas wasn't so bad, over 60% in the first half, and here we are. Arkansas is only up 6 with about 11 minutes to go. Now my live stream's delayed. It's a little bit further behind where I noticed the box score was. So if you hear me talking score and it's a little bit off, it's because mine's delayed probably a little more than I'd like. But welcome into HogvilleNET YouTube Live. Now we're watching together to see if Arkansas can find a way to win this game. It's been more of an attack, get downhill game offensively for Arkansas in the second half, drawing fouls after shooting only 2 first half free throws. Boogie Flan's been part of that plan. But we've seen a lot of issues like I said, on both sides of the ball for the Razorbacks. Those 5 steals came early. Arkansas was just picking pockets, crashing passing lanes. Thero, Fland, Nelly Davis. You had guys getting out and running. DJ Wagner's had his best offensive game. First game in double figure this season. First time to hit a 3-pointer in the regular season now that we're into game 4. He had a couple of those in the first half, plus a deep 2 near the right corner. His toe was on the line. They changed it from a 3 to a 2. So his first 8 points were really deep perimeter shots. But man, the defense, Arkansas came in rated 8th, according to KenPom.com, efficiency on defense. 10.7 steals a game was top 30 in the country. Over 7 blocks a game was top 10 in the country. Only allowing 60 points per game to opponents. And again, a Pacific team that comes in struggling in Arkansas, and they're just playing with Arkansas at this point. It's an 8-point lead now with 10 minutes to go, but it's been hovering, 8, 6. The Pacific's gotten it down to 4 and 3 a couple of times here in the second half. Again, it was 27-11, and Pacific started hitting threes. At one point, they'd made 8 of their first 13 attempts from 3. They were 8 of 18 at halftime, and then the last I looked, they were 11 of 24. So not only a high volume, but the percentage was well over 40%. And so it tells you you're not covering up on perimeter defense. And really what happened was Arkansas was waiting for guys to try to drive, and they were like I said, flashing passing lanes or diving hard on gap help. And they were giving room on the perimeter for guys, I guess, to shoot and not drive. I don't know what the plan was there, but it's been too easy for Pacific to shoot. I don't see any hands up or guys closing hard. So you're seeing a lot of wide open looks from 3, or guys just not close enough to their man, or again, not putting a hand up. And then you've seen when Pacific has put the ball on the floor, a lot fewer turnovers, and they're driving the paint. And it is like the parting of the Red Sea. There is no defensive help. Guys are getting all the way to the basket. We saw Big Z just get out of the way of a couple of guys driving from the circle all the way down for dunks. He's really struggled in this game. Z's hit a couple of threes early, has scored inside a little bit, but he had 5 of Arkansas's 10 turnovers, first 10 turnovers, and most of those are unforced. He's not very strong with the ball. He doesn't like contact around the basket. Rim protection wise, he's going to block some shots. He had 5 the other night. He's got 2 or 3 tonight. But the biggest issue is he's got 2 in 1 possession here as Pacific's down 9. And right now Arkansas is protecting this 9-point lead at 70-61. But Z has either gotten out of the way. Now, this could be part of the game plan as well. We don't know what the coaching staff told these guys. With 2 frontline guys missing, maybe they don't want him getting in foul trouble. And the idea was if you don't have a clean block on a release, don't challenge the body going to the rim. So maybe that's why he's gotten out of the way. We don't know that. Maybe Calipari speaks to some things in the presser and the post-game presser. I'm obviously back in Little Rock tonight, doing this here from home. We're going to talk. I got some updates on recruiting. We're going to get to that a little bit later. Let's get through this game because, again, this is a competitive game still at this point with just over 9 minutes to go. I'm prohibited from doing any play-by-play on here. I think this is a disappointing game, regardless of who's out. Arkansas's got the pieces against a team like this to play a much better game than this. The defense has been stout again up until this point. We'll see if they close strong defensively. But it's a game again where Arkansas has yielded a lot of volume and a high efficiency from three, a lot of just easy runs to the basket for scores, and then give Pacific some credit. But even when they get into their mid-range game, a turnaround fadeaway or a little runner, there's a lot of space between the offensive player and the look they're getting at the basket. Just a lot of cushion there. And so this has been unlike what Arkansas has done so far this year. Boogie Flan's, probably not his best floor game, but I mean, he's gotten to the free throw line. He's hit a three. He's had a couple of pull-up jumpers, a couple of those shots he made. You can go back to the exhibition season when things got tight. Even he's always been a guy that kind of steps up and hits a bucket. Thero, getting in those passing lanes early. He's hit a three tonight. He's one of those guys that's going to put his head down. And if there's not a driving lane there, he just kind of bully balls one and creates it. Very good slasher. Flan just scored again, by the way. So this is a game, it's still a single-digit game. Arkansas cannot put this team away. Another offensive rebound for Pacific. We know Arkansas has not been great there. The Tigers are starting to miss their three-ball shots, but I've seen a few transition plays in the second half where Arkansas has not made the right play. A couple of those, Billy Richmond was on the ball, threw a bounce pass behind Big Z, crashing from the left side in transition. You throw that ball up over the defender. And another one, Carter Knox was ahead of everybody. He kept the ball. Now, he made a spectacular play and got an and-one opportunity, Billy Richmond, on a finish. But the easy play and the right play was to pass that ball. We just saw another transition play where you had a corner guy wide open. And instead of making the simple pass to an open shooter, Flan tried to force something. Arkansas didn't turn it over. Ball deflected out of bounds. They missed an opportunity there. Carter Knox flashing to that left side corner was open. I look at a guy like Nelly Davis still really struggling. In fact, he's a guy that, because he's a really good rebounder at the guard spot, you're going to look at a box score and see he's gotten you some rebounds. He had a steal early. But his body language does not look right to me, not only on offense, but sometimes I notice on defense, he's kind of been standing in ball watching and not engaged. That's not Nelly Davis. Calipari praised him going back to the exhibition season and some of these other previous games at times for his effort. There have been some real question marks for me on him tonight at times. Can't shoot the ball, defense sucks. Well, Arkansas shot pretty well too from three. It's just giving up. Pacific shot better and more of them. You're starting to see more and more from Billy Richmond, some production. Again, he made some mistakes, I thought, in transition here in the second half. Calipari says he's their third point guard. You seen DJ Wagner, after having 5 assists, a season high. He didn't score in the last game, and he had 5 assists and 4 steals. Not as good a defensive night for him, but he led Arkansas with 4 assists at halftime to go with his 8 points at the break, and he's in double-figure scoring with his effort so far in the second half. Arkansas is up 11 going into the under 8-minute timeout. As I'm watching that, you guys may already be back from the timeout. Again, for whatever reason, my live stream's way behind. When I would check the live stats on my phone, the game was progressed more than where my live stream has me watching it. I love the live stream. I'm so sick of it already. I'm ready for the games to be on regular television so we can function normally, or at least I can. I'm struggling with it. It's a stream of consciousness night right now for me. I'm trying to collect my thoughts. Looking at this, Arkansas had those 5 early steals. I mentioned it. 11-10 at halftime was the advantage, only +1. Again, Z had half of those 10 turnovers, a lot of unforced stuff by him. He's not very good with the ball around the basket unless he's going up for a shot. So possessing the ball, gathering, Some of these things, he's methodical. He brings the ball low, or he just, if he gets any contact at all, that thing's it's getting jostled out of his hands, and some quicker guy's going to gobble that up and go the other way. He actually tackled a guy off his first turnover under the basket. You're like, oh man, Arkansas can't really afford for him to get in foul trouble on a frustration foul. But steals, again, Arkansas had 5 in the first 3 minutes, only +1 at halftime. Pacific settled down and figured out how to play against Arkansas's gambling defense. Here's the thing with gambling defense: you can block shots. You're going to get some blocks when you have Arkansas's length and athleticism. You're going to get some steals. Those are great, but games are so many more possessions than on defense, for example, than what you're going to generate in those categories. So you need to be sound defensively, whether you're making plays and counterpunching off that defense by getting live ball turnovers or blocking shots. You need to be sound, and Arkansas just hasn't been sound. They've been sound for the most part, in addition to generating these hustle plays, energy plays. Tonight, they had the energy plays early, and then they've just kind of let off the gas defensively, and it's just been inside and out easy for a team that I don't think is very good. They look good tonight. Arkansas is making it look that way. And again, I mean, Arkansas is now back in a double-digit lead. This felt like a game early. You're up 27-11, where you can win by 25 plus. It's been anything but that as we move through it. So we talked about the turnovers. Arkansas was +9 at the break in turnover, scoring off turnovers, points off turnovers, 16-7. Fast break, Arkansas was 10-0. We know they've been really good in fast break. Even if the margins are close, they've won all those battles so far through the first 3 games. That was the case. It'll probably be the case when the dust settles tonight, but certainly in the first half, +10, 10-0 there. That led to a +10 in points in the paint, 22-12. Again, some of those 12 points, since you can see that Pacific didn't get those in fast break because they didn't have any fast break points. Those 12 points they were getting in the half court and guys getting out of the way and letting them get all the way to the basket. That's a no-no. That's just bad basketball. And again, Arkansas's been better than that defensively. With other struggles they've had shooting from 3, they're better from 3 tonight. They were 6 of 12 at halftime. In the second half, they've made it more of a priority to get to the basket, draw fouls, get to the free throw line. So there's that. But 6 of 12 in the first half. After that huge second half, what did they go? 8 of 12 against Troy in the second half. And prior to that, the first half against Troy, the first 2 games of the regular season, the 2 exhibition games, they were dreadful from 3. So there's some progress there. And only 2 free throw attempts in the first half. It tells you if Arkansas wasn't getting live ball turnovers like they did early and just getting uncontested layups and dunks, or they were shooting threes and they did get hot and go 6 of 12, they weren't really taking the fight. And it's been a game without a lot of physical, athletic fight from Arkansas against a team they match up much better with than they will a lot of SEC teams in terms of all those advantages at every position. They just haven't shown it tonight. That's been Matador. So Arkansas's up 12 with just under 8 to go. This is going to be, again, a chance to either we'll see what Arkansas does to pull this away like they did Lipscomb down the stretch. Or excuse me, I think it was both Lipscomb and Troy. That's what they did in both of those games. They gapped those margins at the end. They won those games going away. Let's see if the formula is the same tonight. Remember the 13-point lead in exhibition season against TCU, a better opponent, but that got shrunk down to nothing, and Arkansas lost that game. It didn't count. Yeah, I mean, and I said a couple of things that Billy Richmond didn't do right in transition offense, but he has scored a little bit tonight. Last I looked, he had 8 points. That's a career high, season high, whenever he's a true freshman. But also makes some good plays on defense because he's aggressive, quick, and athletic. So even if he's not in the right position all the time, he just can make some wild plays by jumping in passing lanes or getting deflections or just reaching and using his physical talents and gifts to win the play. We just saw a backcourt turnover there. We're past that now. Thero with a dunk off a loose ball turnover. Billy Richmond, speaking of him, was in the mix down there in that little melee where the ball came loose. So he does. Both those guys are so aggressive. Thero and Richmond, and they use their athleticism and frame relative to the guy they're guarding across from them to big advantage. And so you just want to see them execute at that point because they're going to be disruptive. You just need to make sure they're finishing and Yeah, Thero's just a hammer, man. This guy's got what, 3 or 4 dunks tonight. He's been Arkansas's best player. He and Fland, the 1-2, and it's continuing. They scored the first 2 baskets tonight off steals, where they just took the ball out high and went in uncontested. Basically, both of them got easy buckets. Arkansas led 4-0. Arkansas led 6-0, all off turnovers. Um, we've seen Carter Knox struggle with his offense so far. Richmond right now is ahead of him when you look at the freshman after Flan. In Arkansas, this is just and what else did we see tonight that's problematic? We talked about it. Jonas Adu not even playing tonight after having 20 minutes total combined through the first 3 games. And then you had Trevor Brazil out. First half, you had Knox go down and look like he hurt his finger or something. He had to be helped out and went off the court for a while. He returned. Nelly Davis was holding his right hand. He went out, came back in, and now I just saw Billy Richmond go down. He's hobbled off the court, and he had to be taken out of the game. This is one of the reasons when we talked in the offseason about weaknesses as far as personnel was not enough of it, not enough depth beyond the top 8 or 9 rotation. So the idea that in a normal circumstance, you're only going to really use 8 or 9 guys, that's not the issue. The issue is, what about attrition, significant foul trouble, illness, injuries? Arkansas has been plagued by injuries going back to the spring and summer. Guys out, in the June and July, into the fall camp. I mean, there's been guys that are constantly out, and there's just not enough bodies there, especially when you only go 4 deep on your front line. That's a problem for Arkansas. The Hogs defensively are a little bit better in these last 5 minutes. Now, Pacific's missed some open threes. Pacific's also gotten some offensive rebounds they didn't cash in here in this stretch. So Arkansas is starting to widen the gap and grab their biggest lead. I mentioned going up 27-11 early. That was a 16-point lead that evaporated. I mean, it was back-to-back threes for Pacific, going down 27-11 and down only 27-20. And then it was game on from there. Right now, Arkansas's back to a 16-point lead, believe it or not. Under 6 minutes to go, 79-63. So this is a game that maybe Arkansas is going to do what it did to close out Lipscomb, to close out Troy, build on kind of close range margins and maybe stretch those out a little bit. Let's talk recruiting for a little bit now that it's not one of those deals where we're necessarily white knuckling this coming down the stretch. This is a situation now Arkansas could end up with the week-long early signing period ending on Wednesday, just 2 more days to go. Arkansas got 3 players signed, all backcourt guys. We've talked so much about it. Darius A. Cup Jr., Malik Thomas, Isaiah Seeley over the weekend. If you haven't seen my interview with him, 7 or 8 minutes long, got that done on Saturday. It's out on HogvilleNET YouTube, on the archive on YouTube. But I did interview him just moments after he publicly announced the commitment. It was a little bit of a strange deal because the U of A prematurely announced his signing at noon, and he had a commitment announcement that was being live streamed by 247 Sports, scheduled for 2:45. So that was one of those weird deals. And then the U of A figured out they made a mistake and took all of it down. But the cat was out of the bag, the toothpaste was out of the tube, and it was too late to put it back. But Arkansas's got 3 on board in the early period, and now you're really kind of paying attention to, is there anything left? Well, Sean Abayev's a guy in that class of 2025, national top 25 4-star. I think he's a 5-star value. Visited Arkansas in October. It's Arkansas, Cincinnati, Auburn, Arizona State, and Oregon. Felt like once Seeley was on board that might be a situation where Arkansas is really going to focus on more frontline guys and not another combo guard wing like Seeley. And Abayev, I think. So here's what I'm told. Arkansas stopped recruiting him. And I really believe, and this is going to be a similar talking point, but with a higher dollar value when we talk Caleb Wilson. But I really think at this point, it goes back to the spring offseason portal recruiting where we saw Arkansas pass on guys because of NIL valuations. They have a valuation range that they have on players. So there's a little wiggle room because it's a range, but they're not going to go crazy and exceed by a lot for any player. That's just what it is. And there are some schools that I've seen that are not capping it. This isn't like the NBA where there's a salary cap. So, and Arkansas's got plenty of NIL money. It's not like they can't. But I think it's smart. Calipari said he's always been a player first guy. He wants to help these guys get what's theirs and get what they can. But at the same time, I think he really values guys that there's a level of loyalty that goes beyond bagging the biggest payday. And so I'm not going to call out specific players. I'm just going to say Arkansas has a formula for it. We saw it play out again in the portal recruiting, and I'm really starting to see it now. Arkansas moved on from Caleb Wilson. They just decided we're not going to be in a highest bidder game here, and there was a cap to what they were going to do. Shut that down, and that's why that visit that was postponed finally is not going to happen. Abayev, Arkansas stopped there too. They got a better cost value scenario with Sealy than they were getting out of that. And now they want to prioritize other things. Remember, your NIL, even when you have a lot of it, Arkansas looking at the next cycle in the spring, it's really the same recruiting cycle. It's just that you have to wait after this early period with high school guys to get to where the portal recruiting comes in and your own team retention. The NIL that these guys on the current team have, that all is negotiable again, and it opens back up moving forward after the season, because you're going to have some guys looking to go pro. You're going to have some guys weighing that versus, well, what's my NIL going to be if I stay at Arkansas or if I look to go somewhere else? So there's a lot of things at play there, and you're going to be spreading NIL money around not only on portal guys. Calipari has stated, I need a balance on my roster. And with 3 guys in the early period, the only thing I can see now is it's multiple ways you can go. Just like this first roster build, Arkansas only took 3 guys from the high school level, and they were all backcourt / wing guys. That's what they've got so far. 3 last year, this last recruiting cycle, 3 on board now. Are you done with high school? I don't think so, and I think they're going to find someone on the front line. But if they don't, they'll load up in the portal again. It's not been great for them so far with Jonas Adu, an all-SEC big man, all-SEC defensive team big man at that. Really not, it's persona non grata so far this season. Trevor Brazil already hurt, a guy that returned, but you didn't get him out of the portal because he returned, but he was in the portal when you decided you were going to keep him and he wanted to stay, so he had to get out of the portal to come back. So there's a lot of factors going into how you can manage your roster. With Calipari saying, I'm going to take 3 or 4 high school guys, and the rest of it I want to balance with player retention and portal. That's what he did. He put his money where his mouth was on the first cycle. Now we're into this next cycle, and we're keeping an eye on it. And then it leaves you with, well, Caleb Wilson's off the board. I mentioned it. Arkansas not going to go down that road of being caught up in that highest bidder situation. Look, Chris and I've written about this yesterday when I kind of went through what the frontline options might be. There's a lot more smoke lately for Tennessee, which I was mentioning the last few episodes in concert with Arkansas and Kentucky and that LSU visit he was going to have. Maybe Houston's back in play. They're having a really good recruiting cycle, the Cougars are. But I don't think Arkansas has passed on that one. Caleb Wilson, yes. I think Arkansas is still efforting and in the mix trying to make that happen. I think they're pushing for Chris Sinak. We'll see what happens. It's not a whole lot of smoke with Arkansas and him in the last few days. But I do think that's one you don't completely take your eyes off of. We mentioned Mika Murnin. We talked so much about him, class of 2026, strongly considering that reclass to 2025. That may not be decided until the next couple of months, maybe all the way into the spring. But either way, you can't add him until the spring because that's when the next signing period is. And even though they don't do national letters of intent anymore, they do financial aid agreements similar to what the transfer portal guys do. You still have the signing periods, and so high school players can't just sign the financial aid agreement at any old time like a transfer portal player could once they're in the portal. So you'll still have to wait to the spring for that to sort out. He's a top 10 rated 5-star, 6'10", 6'11", stretch 4, Mika Murnin. But there's a couple of other guys, and I'm going to go through these in order. One of them's another 2026. I have a source that's told me this big man, he says it's more of a remote possibility that he's going to reclass, but if the right coach and the right scenario gets in his ear, that may be something that can happen. And look, Calipari's that kind of guy. He's one of those that's down for that kind of thing. This is a 7-foot big man. I've reported on him for a while. He told me back in July that Calipari, he had spoken to Calipari, and he had offered him, the way he phrased it was, the head coach at Arkansas. But the young man was started at Dynasty Prep in Montreal, Quebec. Ended up he's at Iowa United Prep. Calipari not only offered him in July, but back in October, Calipari went to Iowa United Prep and went to see him. But his name is Arafan Diane, a 7-footer forward center. Again, class of 2026. On3 Sports has him ranked 40th in the country. I think one other service has him around 50 to 55, somewhere in that range. And then 2 of the other services don't even have him ranked right now. So that's a guy, he's got the Arkansas offer. Calipari went out to see him in the recruiting period. I pay attention to these things. And then I've got a source telling me that maybe he's not as strong a candidate as Mika Murnin is to reclass, but if the situation's right, the calculation on that might change. Well, Nelly Davis, by the way, we're not play-by-play anymore. I'm not doing live. We're on the other end now. Just hit another 3. So by my count, he's got at least 2 threes in this game. I believe this is his first multiple 3-point game. So let's call that out. He had a 3 in the last game as well against Troy, and he'd only had 1 in the first 2 games prior to that. So at least Arkansas is showing quite a bit more competency shooting from 3 so far. It's a shame the defense has been a bummer tonight, but it has been. And I don't think all that's on the fact that you don't have Trevor Brazile. I mean, Brazile has been a better player in some ways, and even in some of the blue-collar stuff than he has been previously. But it's been a collective effort defensively until tonight. It's been kind of a collective letdown, outside of some of the playmaking skills and some of the shot blocking. You just don't have enough of those throughout a game of possessions that you can afford to have letdowns defensively in what positioning you have, how you rotate, how you close, and say that you had a great defensive night. Stats can sometimes be misleading when you really get loose like Arkansas got tonight with its defense. I thought they really just kind of let go at times. But up 19 points here, 17 points with a little more than a minute to go. This game's basically over. So Arafan, getting back to the recruiting, Arafan Diane, let's see. Again, the early period is closing down. You're not going to see movement on guys like this before this signing period's over. The next guy whose name's been out there since July, Arkansas's coaching staff went. It was one of those high school camps. A lot of guys from international type guys there too. The NCAA college basketball camp. It was really a little bit misleading. A lot of high school age players from around the globe there. A young man from Dakar that's playing at Bella Vista Prep out west in the United States. Muhammad Silla. There was a Muhammad Silla in the class of 2019. I think Boogie Flan just put an exclamation mark on this with a corner 3. Arkansas is up now 91-69. This game's over. This is the kind of score you were thinking this would be. Arkansas did a much better job in the second half. I think after going 8 of 18 in the first half Pacific, I mentioned it. The last I checked, they were 11 of 23, 11 of 24. So the early stage of the second half, not much difference, and they were hanging around down 3, down 5, down 6. But Arkansas then, the last 10 minutes, since I've been on here, the last 10 or so minutes, Arkansas really put the hammer down. And so this was, the kind of margin you wanted to see. Final score, 91-72, 19-point win. This is Arkansas's largest margin of victory. The first 2 wins, season over against Lipscomb, 16, 76-60. You had the 16-point win then over Troy, 65-49. You lost by 5 to Baylor, 72-67. You gave up 72 tonight against this team. It was a team averaging 77. Look, Arkansas should have kept this team down in the 60s at minimum, maybe in the 50s. I think they only scored 57 in their previous game. Every game takes on its own personality. A team can get hot. I thought a lot of that hot shooting was just bad Arkansas defense, giving guys too much space on the perimeter. And then after really wreaking havoc, jumping those passing lanes, Arkansas got passive defensively, but you still win by 19. You're 3-1. Arkansas is ranked 20th. The Hogs played only once last week, won that game against Troy. held a team scoring 81 points a game to 49. And Arkansas broke out a little bit shooting from three, which was a problem area. And you thought, would they really fall in the rankings? But they did. I guess folks aren't impressed with this team. They went 1-1 in week one, dropped from 16 to 18. AP then dropped them to 20 when the polls came out today. The coaches poll after week one dropped Arkansas was also ranked 16th preseason coaches, USA Today coaches. After that week 1-1 run with a loss on a neutral site to Baylor, Arkansas the coaches dropped them 5 spots to 21. After last week, they dropped 3 spots. So even more droppage in the coaches poll. They're down to 24. They're almost not in there anymore. But they're 3-1. They're going to host Little Rock on Friday. This is a Little Rock team that's really banged up. Lost KK Robinson to an injury for the season. To me, this guy was preseason Ohio Valley Player of the Year. He was first team All-League last year for a team that won that league and was 1 win away in their conference tournament from making the NCAA tournament. KK, big part of what they do over there. They've got other good players, but their backcourt depth is thin. They do not have, I don't think they have, they've got a couple of guys they've been running at point. One of those guys was in a car accident recently, didn't even play in their last game, a 16-point win at Texas San Antonio over Saturday. I saw Little Rock play at Arkansas State. I was at that game in Jonesboro last week. But you really see how turnover prone that team is with really just poor guard play at the lead guard spot. They've got some weapons, but you got to get them the ball, and their offensive flow really gets disruptive with KK not out there. They just don't have depth at the position, and one of the 2 remaining guys they have is questionable because he missed the last game. He's been dealing with stuff. He didn't look right when I watched him play against ASU. So we'll see about Little Rock, but that could be, is that a trap kind of a game? I don't know. Little Rock, if they were at full health, I would think that's a dangerous team for the Razorbacks. It was a team before the pollsters knew that KK was hurt because it happened late in practice, right before the season started. Little Rock was receiving votes in the AP Top 25 poll in the preseason poll. So there's that. All right. So Arkansas 3-1. Again, Razorbacks came in right with the 8th best defensive efficiency rating in the country, according to KenPom. So let's get back to recruiting. I know I'm jumping back and forth, but going back to Muhammad Silla, his name's been out there a while. Arkansas's coaching staff in July was out to see him at that camp. He's from Dakar originally, but he's at Bella Vista Prep, not Bella Vista, Arkansas, up there in Northwest Arkansas, but Bella Vista. I think it's Arizona, out west. But Arkansas is a 6'11" big man. There's talk that maybe Arkansas's trying to get back in the picture, be more in the picture with him. But look, I've never been told or seen any public announcement of an offer or that Calipari or any staff member had been out to see him at Bella Vista. That doesn't mean that didn't happen. It just means that there's not been a lot of traction with him in terms of what the public knows or has seen. That's something to think about a little bit as Arkansas maybe tries to reemerge. You've also got Nate Ament, who Calipari's been out to see 4 times. Now that's a top 5 rated 5-star. He's not a big man. He's a 3-4 at the pro level. I've said this many times. He's probably going to be more of a wing, with a 3-4 and a small ball lineup like Michael Porter Jr. That's my player comp. I've said it forever. But at the college level, he could be a 3-4 combo. Highly skilled guy, knockdown shooter from 3, just a very talented player, makes the right reads on offense, good passer, understands the game, high level of understanding at his age, and all the skill and length at 6'9". So he can help you as a 4-5, a 3-4, excuse me. So he'll be able to be on the court as he gets stronger, especially, and help you in some 4 situations. So he would, in my mind, be, you could argue that's a frontline piece to the puzzle, similar to Adu Thero, who's a 3-4 combo, but we see him manning the 4 a lot for the Hogs on a thin front line. So again, I'm not, Ament's not strong like that. They're not the same kind of player, but with his height and length and how cerebral he is, he's a guy that he's going to be able to help you in more than one spot. But he's a guy that's probably going to wait till the spring. He's taken multiple visits, no traction on him making an announcement anytime soon or cutting his list down. And again, you've got less than 48 hours to get it done because the end of the early signing period is Wednesday the 20th. This is Monday the 18th. So Nate Ament's one to keep an eye on as we move through to the spring. Same with Mika Murnin. Same with Arifan Diane, who I just talked about. Muhammad Silla. There was a Muhammad Silla I mentioned, class of 2019. I think he played at Boise State, a different guy, obviously, and he's a class of 2025. On Three Sports has him ranked 13th in the country, but a 4-star so far. I think he's 30th in one of the other outlets, and then he's not ranked in a couple of other ones. Again, he's originally from Dakar, playing at Bella Vista Prep. So he's a guy that, again, there's just not been a lot out there. I know for a fact Arkansas coaches were out to see him in July again at that camp, and he was one of the better performers there. And he's a front line piece. But if you looked at what Calipari did in his recruiting at Kentucky last year, before that team got bounced from the tournament again early and get to Oakland in the first round, he had 6 guys signed early, and 2 of those were big men. Somptu Cyril, and of course Quaintance, who's a year younger than his class, and a guy that's can't even be a one and done if he's good enough to be. He's going to have to be in college, I think, for 2 years. Went on to Arizona State, but Calipari did not bring those guys. And I think part of that, especially with Quaintance, was not getting into this NIL back and forth, on a highest bidder thing when Arkansas could go get veteran guys with experience. Hasn't paid off yet, but you don't predict that, Jonas Adu is going to be hurt and missing in action. So not knowing that, you made the right move there. So I don't think Arkansas is going to make a leap and throw a bunch of NIL money at a frontline guy just because they might be at a higher premium when they can hit the portal again and do that. And I think that's why Arkansas moved on from Caleb Wilson. It's partly why they moved on from Sean Abiva, even though he's a combo guard / wing, because they felt like the cost value return on investment there relative to what they're getting with Sealy and what they got there. They moved on from that. Frontline guys, a little bit different. Calipari proved this last recruiting cycle, I need to have fewer high school guys, and he didn't bring frontline guys. He wanted experience there. That's a calculation he made in this last class, and I believe that we might see something similar to that moving forward. That's not to say he won't get one of these either high-level guys that you would consider, even Nate Amid, again, is a 3-4 guy. We'll call him a frontline helper. But the other 2 more traditional bigs that I mentioned the names of, and even Mika Murnin as a stretch 4 would probably be a 4-5 at Arkansas. So you've got all these options. Several of those look like they're headed to the spring. Maybe only one of those, Silla, who there's just not a lot out there about Arkansas getting involved. But again, I don't see anything happening early with that. You've only got 48 hours. You have to figure out a way if you're going to visit to get them on campus. Unless there's been one of those under the cover of night visits like Nellie Davis did. We got wind of it, but no one could ever get physical proof of it. And then we know he ended up being a hog. Barring something like that, I just don't see anybody coming off the board here now in the early period, unless maybe, and I'm going to circle back to Chris Anak, unless Arkansas gets that worked out, he puts an end to everything. He's taken all his visits, all of his top 7, he took those visits. There's disagreement on whether he waits and gets it done. There's still time for that because he's taken all the visits, and we know about it. If Arkansas can somehow get back in the lead there, or get finally in the lead there, I really felt at one point Arkansas was right there with LSU, especially with Caleb Wilson trending to Kentucky. Then I started hearing more Tennessee, then more with Houston. Not as much Arkansas lately, but now talking to a couple of more sources today, not only do I understand that Arkansas moved on from Caleb Wilson, moved on from Sean Abiva, I don't think they're done with Chris Anak. He may be done with them and they don't know it yet, but I think they're trying to make a push there. So we'll see. And then it comes down to, can you get it done early? Can you get it done early? Because you're running out of time there. Remember, he's already visited. He did that in late October. So that's where it stands. I mean, Arkansas, I haven't looked at all the recruiting rankings. I just know they have the best backcourt in the country for this high school class. I've said that over and over. To me, that's obvious. When you've got 2 top 7 rated 5-star guards, one's a lead guard, one's a 2. They're not going to knock heads. Positionally, they're going to be able to complement and play together. Isaiah Sealy at 55th ranked by ESPN. His rankings are outside of ESPN, a little further down the trough, as they say, pushing 75 to 100. I don't care about that. He's 6'7". He's got point guard skill and talent. He can play the 2. He's been working on catch and shoot. He looks good. a guy that can play above the rim. He can play the wing. So he's really versatile. And what the Arkansas coaches love about him, I've talked about it a lot, after watching him play with other elite players, they like about how much of a complementary piece he is without having to be demanding his amount of shots or being on the ball a certain amount of time. He will plug and play as you need him with the talent to now. He's got to get stronger. He's got to add some beef to that 6'7" frame. He's a thin guy. But he plays a little stronger than he looks, too. I mean, he's a guy that got in foul trouble playing against Little Rock Christian and J.J. Andrews. I was at that game. Cal was there. Chin Cullen was there, associate coach. Immediate foul trouble. I think Sealy played 3 first-half minutes, got a third foul, and that was because he got 2 fouls early in the first quarter, came right out of the game 2 minutes in. I think started the third quarter, played a minute, picked up his third foul, went right back out. Picked up his fourth foul. So total in the game, quarters in high school are 8 minutes per quarter, 4 quarters. Obviously, that's 32-minute game. He played maybe 10 to 11 minutes total because of foul trouble and ended up with 11 points, 5 of 7 from the field, 5 rebounds. If I'm remembering correctly, he had 4 assists, a couple of steals, and a couple of blocks. He did all that in 11 minutes. J.J. Andrews, class 2026, priority Arkansas target, will visit Arkansas late December. The week and we'll be able to attend the Arkansas-Oakland game to close out non-conference play going into SEC play a few days later. He'll have a visit then, but 27 points and 13 big rebounds in that matchup. It was a blowout for Springdale. That's probably the best team in the state, projected maybe to be the best team, and obviously then in 7A. Little Rock Christian, after back-to-back 4A state titles, has moved up to 5A, but J.J. Andrews does not have the talent around him that he had the last 2 years, whereas Springdale's pretty much loaded right now. A lot of goodies there, and that's how Springdale won, going away by double digits with Sealy not playing a whole lot. But I think Arkansas's got the best backcourt in the country when you look at high school recruiting. All right, 42 minutes in. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. Another game, if you go back to Lipscomb, if you go back to Troy, if you go back to this mid-major tonight, Arkansas wasn't dominant throughout. If you look at even going back to the Troy game, it was just like a melee, bodies all over the floor, physical, ugly game, a lot of turnovers. Arkansas started hitting threes finally in the second half and kind of pulled away. But the game was competitive up until that point. And it's been kind of like that against these mid-majors. We saw what happened against Baylor, a team that's ranked, Baylor, was 8th? When they lost by 38 to Gonzaga, then beat Arkansas by 5 at a neutral site closer to Baylor's campus. Arkansas not at full strength because of Jonas Adu being out, but also Langston Love still out of Baylor's lineup. Still, Baylor hasn't fallen as much as Arkansas has, which I think is a little bit interesting. Thero's a beast. Yeah, it was an ugly game. Thero is a beast. He's a physical. Look, here's what's going to happen. When you start playing teams that have more athleticism, more size, he's not going to be able to have his way as much as he is right now against some of these teams. And so he's still a guy, when you look at, he's not the most polished ball handler on his drives. I go back to Michael Qualls was a big-time slasher. Everybody remembers the dunks, but he loved to drive, and he got better and better as a three-point shooter. It wasn't his comfort zone. So when he caught the ball in the wing, he liked to use that, try to get a first step drive and get to the basket. He wanted to dunk or get close range, and he was kind of careless. He wasn't the tightest ball handler. And so he'd have turnovers, or he couldn't finish his drive because he couldn't keep the ball tight. And so he'd get off course. Someone would get a deflection or disrupt it. Thero's kind of that guy, not the same kind of player, but the similarity in terms of, so when he goes from stride, dribble to gather, it's not going to be as easy just to continue to blow through guys on a sloppy play like that and get some of these finishes. Sounds like I'm being negative and looking for a reason to gripe for a guy that's been Arkansas's best player so far. And let's not forget, against a high major, Baylor, no slouch with good players, he had 24 in that game and really kept Arkansas in it. So he's going to have plenty of big nights. He's been the top guy. Boogie Flan tonight did some good things. But they've been Arkansas's best players to this point. You like to see the fact that DJ Wagner started making shots. With the second half against Troy, the full game tonight, I haven't seen Arkansas's final stats from 3, but 6 of 12 in the first half. I liked it when you're only up 7 at the break in a 3-point shooting match when the other team's actually taking more and making more than you, that Arkansas says, okay, there's no way this team should match us physically or athletically. We shot 2 free throws in the first half. We were up 16. We were only up 7 at the break. Let's start attacking. Let's get downhill. They started doing that, started drawing fouls really early in that second half and getting to the free throw line. And because I don't have stats in front of me and I'm really going off halftime stuff, I'm sure Arkansas ended up doing a pretty good job at the free throw line tonight in terms of second half getting there in volume, and then getting some separation in the disparity when compared to probably what Pacific was able to do there. Pacific cooled off shooting from three. Some of that was missing some open shots. Maybe they got tired, but they again at one point were 11 of 23, I believe. So I don't know what the final stat is there, but I think they went cold, and that was maybe partly Arkansas doing a better job. I thought they missed some open ones, and Arkansas wasn't around. They just started missing some. But I'll be interested to see also where the turnovers are. Arkansas continues to create live ball turnovers with effort and making plays. And then on the other end, it's not to discredit other teams, but Arkansas is getting a lot of unforced turnovers. It's not really, the craftsmanship of the defense on the other side. It's just, for whatever reason, I mean, if you blow on Big Z right now, that ball's coming out. Not the best decision maker. Some of his footwork around the basket, we saw him walk out on the perimeter when he was trying to clear himself for a three, and he just bunny hopped both feet, and that was a travel. And then you just some careless stuff where it's not as much forced turnover by the defense as it is Arkansas's unforced turnovers. And when you play with pace, you're going to have some of that. But those are where you're good. Your bread and butter is winning in transition. It's winning the more you win in transition, that's going to help your points in the paint, because if you're in transition, you're getting in the paint to finish at the rim, and winning that turnover battle. Arkansas in the first half was not great on the glass, only +2. Arkansas shot 62%. Pacific shot a really high rate, 8 of 18 from three. In fact, 44% in that first half. So maybe not a lot of rebounds to be had, but Arkansas continues to not dominate on the offensive glass. They continue not to dominate second chance. And when you're, maybe that's not the strength of your team right now with AD out and then Brazil out tonight, who will get you some of those hustle play rebounds. But even having said that, against some of these opponents where you're just outmatched them at every position, size-wise, athleticism, and strength, that's a problem. I think Arkansas needs to get better there. But you win by 19. This felt like a game, maybe if this team doesn't get hot from three and Arkansas plays the kind of defense it's played so far, the kind of game you win by 30. But I think Arkansas led by 21 when it got late, finished up plus 19. 91-72 mark scoring for the Razorbacks this year. 72 points is the most the team's given up. They've done that twice now. Baylor and this Pacific team. And give credit, give some credit to these guys. I mean, they could have missed most of these shots, but they got hot. And Arkansas, again, I thought kind of strange defensive performance, because you're going to look at this final stat sheet and see a lot of steals and a lot of blocks. But the eye test showed us a lot of uncontested shots, even after they started making threes. Arkansas, Calipari took at least one timeout, maybe two, and they never really took that away. But when they gave up drive, they really gave them up. I mean, it was carte blanche, Matador. Here, here's a free lane. Go ahead. We'll get out of the way. Get that dunk. So some of those things they got, and I thought they did kind of doing this and looking over second half of the second half, the fourth quarter, the last 10 minutes. It looked a little bit like Arkansas was doing better and better and generating some more of those plays on defense that have helped them have, coming into this game, the eighth rated when you look at defensive efficiency in the country, according to KenPom. I don't know how many players Arkansas had in double figures tonight. The last I looked, coming out of halftime and knowing that DJ Wagner got off to a good start in the second half. You had Big Z and Thero that led Arkansas in first half scoring. Flynn certainly was up there tonight. DJ Wagner. I don't know if Billy Richmond, the last I saw, he had 8 points. I don't know if he ever got any more to get into double figures. And maybe Nelly Davis. I know he had a layup early in the game. He ended up hitting 2 threes maybe in the second half. That gets him to 8. If he got any more, I missed it. So maybe he got to double figures. But when you score 91 points and you're only 7 deep, you figure some guys hit that scoring column tonight that maybe – it's really been, for the most part, Thero and Fland when you look at consistent offensive production. So, again, consider the opponent, but more guys got in the scoring column tonight with all of Arkansas's problems, I think, defensively on a night where you thought maybe they'd take that defense to another level. They're confusing right now. They're a mixed bag. The offense gets out of flow, partly due, and that goes a long way to why they have some of these unforced turnovers. Guys not on the same page. There were times I thought Nelly Davis's body language wasn't right at either end. And Arkansas was in weird positions on both ends. I'm like, why are they there? Why aren't they moving? Where's the rotation? What's going on here? But having said that, you're 3-1 with a chance to move to 4-1 against Little Rock. This was the second of a 4-game homestand against mid-major schools. Troy last week, you won that. Tonight, Pacific, you won that. Little Rock on Friday. So you got a few days to see, can Jonas Adu get to a point where he's ready to play and have an impact and a role? How long do you hold out Trevor Brazil? Well, how long does that last? Calipari's probably going to address some of these things. He's going to be asked about it. Maybe he gives some real detail tonight in the postgame presser. I wish I was there tonight. I've had some family stuff going on since I drove back from Dallas in that Baylor game that's kept me back in the 501 for the last week or so. So, family comes first, right? Don't like making excuses, but that's a valid one. But I'm glad to do this. I'm enjoying it. 51 minutes in. I've been trying to cut them down and not go over an hour or get to an hour. Doing a little bit better lately, not so much tonight. We are doing an in-game, post-game. We did talk recruiting. Arkansas moved on from Sean Abayev. They moved on from Caleb Wilson. The schools and fans recruiting those players are going to say, baloney. They aren't getting them. No, I'm just telling you I've got the information now, and I see the process, and it makes sense to me. I understand why. I'm not throwing in the towel on Chris and Knack. Again, there's not been a lot of movement in Arkansas's favor in terms of what I've been getting from most sources and what, some of the scuttlebutt is out there. But at the same time, I've got one or two that feel like Arkansas is still in the mix with a push here. And we'll see what happens. I mean, maybe that if you get him, now you really do have a case when you add front court to what you've done in this back court as the number one overall class. You can always make that case if you're top 5-ish in the rankings. Arkansas, I don't know where they are exactly there now. They've got the best backcourt. I've said that. But you add a Sanak, a top 10 rated 5-star. Later, if you add Mika Murinen, a top 5 rated 5-star in that 2026 class, he'll be a top 10 guy. If he reclasses, he's gonna bump up, in my opinion. I think he'll end up in that top 10, another frontline guy. However this shakes out, if Arkansas gets one of these guys on to add to the front, add a frontline piece to, let's say, call it a 4-level, a 4-player, highly pursued class, because we know Calipari's going to backfill outside his top 9 rotation. I think, if anything, watching what's happened so far at Arkansas this season with Adu, Jonas Adu, with Trevor Brazil, with Adu Thero missing time, injured in the preseason, Nelly Davis, I think if any time is a good time to raise the bar on your new philosophy of 3 to 4 high school guys and then ultimately 8 to 9 rotation guys, I'm going to 10 rotation guys to make sure I've got bodies that I know can impact a game, even though the 9th and 10th guy might not be crazy about their role and maybe a potential at the end of the year to be someone that's out of the program. I think you need to survive and sustain during the season at hand. And so, my opinion, Calipari's going to do what he wants to do and do it his way. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but right now it doesn't feel right based on where they are numbers-wise. So if you expand that, if you did do that, if you cheated on your philosophy, your new philosophy a little bit, it'd be understandable. Stretch that full group out to 10. Maybe you can expand with this really good 2025 class and maybe pluck a Mika Murinen out of 26. Maybe you could expand from 3 or 4 to 5 coveted guys out of the high school level. And if you're blowing up your full thing to 10, you're not cheating yourself on the back end with some of the player retention that you might be looking at, as well as the portal. Remember, Arkansas took only 2 true portal players, because the guys that came from Kentucky, that was really roster retention. Those were roster retention. The only reason why they count as transfers is because he changed jobs. So he retained 3 guys. The 3 guys, 3 of the 6 he got out of high school. When he tweaked his philosophy, he wanted to cut down how much of that represented his top rotation guys. So he brought those 3. Then you only had 2 true portal guys, and you had Trevor Brazil coming back to Arkansas effectively. Although you could argue he was a portal player in theory because he's playing for a new team and or the same team but a new staff. It gets a little confusing. But the point is, you could expand on this a little bit. It might behoove what we're seeing now with this attrition already this early in the year. And who knows, this may get all. I mean, last year Kentucky struggled with frontline injuries. They were kind of piecework getting through the early parts of their schedule, and that was a really good team. People want to focus on that first round loss to Oakland. It was a team that finished one game out of first place in a loaded, a deep, a well-respected SEC, and was generally ranked 10 to 20, somewhere for a while in the top 10, typically 10 to 20, somewhere in that range. It was a really good Kentucky team offensively, not as much defensively. Tonight's Arkansas team defensively reminded me at times of those Kentucky teams last year. Just kind of like, okay, we're getting out and running. We're having a little more success from three, but there was some letdown on the other end. And so you want to play fast, you still got to be good defensively. And I said this before tonight's game, that what Arkansas's offense struggling with 3-point shooting, they were really playing off the strength as their defense, and then counterpunching off that. If you're not a good 3-point shooting team, if you're still figuring out and getting guys in a flow and getting guys to play right, what was Arkansas doing again? It was turnovers, live ball turnovers, getting out in transition, some of those things, and you're just kind of, those are your counter punches off playing a strong defensive brand. Tonight, that really wasn't there for the most part. I think maybe down the stretch it got a little better, but I think you're going to have to be better for these long stretches as you start to get into some of these games. By the way, I mentioned Arkansas in the polls, falling to 20th in the AP, down to 24th in the coaches poll. Coming into today, there were 31 overall in KenPom, I think in the 60s, ranked offense efficiency, and again, 8th in defensive efficiency. But Illinois, Arkansas plays Illinois in the Turkey Throwdown next week. We know Little Rock's Friday. Then on Monday, you play Maryland Eastern Shore at home. That's the fourth and final game against a mid-major at home. Arkansas should be at that point 5-1 going to that Illinois contest. The Illini have started the season 3-0, and they moved into the rankings. They made their debut today when the AP poll came out at 25th. So, barring something happening to either team this week in terms of a loss, that's probably going to be Arkansas' second game of the year already on November 28th, Thanksgiving Day. Kansas City, CBS game, 3 p.m. Right as of now, I plan on being there. Hopefully get some of my stuff resolved back here so I can go to that. But look, it'll be Arkansas' second game with in a two teams ranked matchup. Arkansas was 16th, Baylor was 8th when that game happened in Dallas, neutral site. So you'd have another game between ranked teams potentially next week. So you already knew some of these marquee games were good, but it's always better. It adds luster to it when both teams are ranked. We'll see if that's the case come next week. I think that's also an interesting thing. Again, where's Arkansas injury-wise? And then you saw, again, Billy Richmond have to hobble off the floor later. I didn't notice late if he came back in or not, but I don't remember that. All right, 58 minutes in, I'm going to sign off. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live in-game, post-game, recruiting, catching you up to speed on that. I think we've given you some good nuggets there, some new intel there. Arkansas 3-1, 91-72 over Pacific. It wasn't always pretty. Arkansas's defense, I thought, had its biggest letdown of the season. I mentioned in that Baylor game that Arkansas had bad stretches dealing with two-man defense off pick and roll and letting guards get deep and then not contesting them. And they really struggled dealing with Omir Norshad. A lot of teams are going to have those problems with him, or Norshad Omir. Excuse me, I got his names turned around. But they were better defensively in that game overall and for longer stretches even than they were tonight until maybe the last few minutes. So having said that, that's a little disappointing. A lot of guys scored tonight. Maybe some guys are thrown out. That's good. If you haven't done it already, please go ahead, subscribe, like, and share. If you like the content, we love bringing it to you. But until next time, as I'm not going to get to a full hour, thanks for being here. See you next time.